But I would point out that in the inauguration speech, he talks a lot about immigration, and we're going to see what, this is going to get tied up in the American courts about whether he can deport illegal immigrants and whether the children of illegal immigrants born in the United States or even the children of non-permanent residents born in the United States can become American citizens, as they always have. So he majored on immigration and the southern border, but he was very sotto voce on tariffs. They were not a big feature of the speech. He said he would look at them. Everyone was expecting, including markets, a flurry of announcements about big tariffs being erected against Mexico, Canada, China in these first few weeks, or first few days even. That has not happened. And I think that's kind of pretty interesting. And the other sort of observation I'd make, which you very much feel here in Davos, and it comes to the announcement that was right at the end of the clips we played you, when he's standing there with some of the big tech leaders. He's standing there with Sam Altman, who's the guy who created OpenAI, the big AI company, with Larry Ellison, who created Oracle, and with someone called Masa-san, who's the richest person in Japan and a kind of great investor in technology. And he says we're going to spend $500 billion on something called Stargate, which is a great big data center in Texas that's going to power the machines that power artificial intelligence. And, it is leaving, the United States is leaving the rest of the world behind. There is no country outside of China who could possibly put together a project like that. I mean, it's, the idea that Britain could spend a fraction of that on data centers is, for the moment, for the birds, and we'll come on to whether you'd even get planning permission for it. And, I think, and this started not under Trump, but started under Biden with something called the CHIP Act. I think America is going for technological supremacy. It's not insecurity. 5-6 years ago, it was worried about the rise of China, the rise of the other big powers, the end of Pax Americana and all that. I think now it's like America can go it alone because we've got these enormous companies. We lead in all these technologies. We hoover up the world's talent, because actually two of these big AI companies are led by Brits and one is led by a Frenchman, but they've been the AI divisions of these companies, but they've been, people of talent all over the world, including from China, come to the United States, and no other country quite pulls that off. And I think we're entering this period of American technological dominance, and no one really has an answer for it. There's a whole question of whether China can keep up. The European Union is nowhere. Britain is nowhere. And let alone the global South, which are, obviously have no prospect of keeping pace with the kind of investments that these American technology companies and now the American federal government are making.
It's reported that Trump had his first call with President Xi at the end of last week, but apparently his state secretary, China hawk, Marco Rubio, wasn't on the call. And then in the days afterwards, Donald Trump announces that he's going to make concessions to Chinese-owned TikTok to allow it to carry on operating in the United States against what was a bipartisan piece of legislation in Congress last year to say that TikTok has to be divested from their Chinese owner ByteDance. He's taken on the Republican China hawks in the name of technological openness.
Well, it's very interesting. I saw a really interesting argument here. Argument in the best sense, a debate between someone called Neil Ferguson, many of you will know as a kind of professor of history and commentator, and someone called Ian Bremmer, who runs one of the biggest global political consultancies, both really smart people on global affairs. And they were just disagreeing on this big question, which is Trump going to be a China skeptic and a China hawk, as you like, or is he going to be a China dove? And it's not yet clear. But his first action, as you say, the most sort of visible thing, because TikTok did actually close for a few hours in America, and it's got tens of millions of users in the United States, and of course hundreds of millions of users elsewhere in the world. And it closed briefly on the last day of the Biden presidency, and then Trump explicitly and in public said, "Stay open. I've got a deal for you, and if you can get half of your ownership American, if you can bring in Americans, then you can stay open." And, that is a big concession, if you like, because Beijing had, I think quite understandably, been very angry that there had been this unilateral US action against one of its companies. So It's very interesting to watch. And I think the final thing I'd say about Trump, for all the kind of eccentricity and however uncomfortable you are with, all these tech leaders being there, is it so different from what Biden was doing in terms of trying to secure American dominance in things like chips? And fundamentally, isn't Trump a peace lover? The one consistent thing about Donald Trump is he is against foreign conflicts. He's against American involvement in those conflicts. Arguably it was his insistence that the hostage deal in Israel was achieved before he came to office that has sort of got that process underway. And so if you are worried about the state of the world, you can certainly be worried about the fraying of the liberal institutions, the international order, what it means for American democracy. But it doesn't mean, I think, we're on the brink of some great war, because that is not what Donald Trump seeks out.
I understand that. And actually, it may be that the great irony is he will not only be the peacemaker with China, but seek to be, that his Nixon moment will be reaching out to a weakened Iran in order to find a way through the Middle East. But on the other hand, I'm going to go back to my thesis of earlier. He reverses the Biden executive orders on healthcare, which will mean rising costs for prescription drugs for lower income Americans. If he has a big fiscal expansion to pay for his tax cuts for the rich, in the end, that will mean higher interest rates for ordinary Americans. If he goes down this tariff road, which he will do to some extent, is that going to mean higher prices and lower growth, weakening the stock market? He's not going to be able to blame anybody else. He's going to own this agenda. And, if he's smart and it's a good, sensible agenda and he says things but then aims off the madness, then maybe he will succeed. But I think he's going to be judged on outcomes and not just words quite quickly. And historically, populists don't like that. They would always rather somebody else is being judged and they have somebody else to blame. So we will see.